If I had to start all over again and rebuild my $5 million real estate portfolio in 2025, here's the exact steps that I would take. Number one is prepare my financials. And like the saying goes, it takes money to make money. That's 100% true when it comes to real estate. And the ideal amount to save is 20%. And the reason why people save 20% is because if you can bring that to the table, then the banks won't charge you an extra insurance when they're giving you a mortgage. Because in general, you're going to need a loan from the bank. And the reason why 20% is so critical is because in general, when you're applying for a loan to buy real estate from a bank, they're going to charge you an extra cost on the mortgage if you give less than 20%. And that's a cost that I'm trying to avoid because I want to make as much money as possible when I'm buying my first house. And that is why I'm aiming for 20% down deposit. So if it's a $100,000 house, I have to bring $20,000. Now I know this is probably the most hardest part, and I know you can't just magically create money, and that was exactly the same situation that I was in. I knew that real estate is what I wanted to get into. I wanted to buy my first place as soon as I possibly could, and I had no money. So I created a very strict budget plan, and what helped me, honestly, was that I tracked the last 6 months of every single transaction that I did. Every single dollar that came in and every single dollar that came out, I categorized every single expense. And I made sure that I would limit the amount going out and just really stick to the needs for a short time so I could just save as much as possible and as fast as possible. So I did a really strict review and I created a very strict budget. And any extra savings that I did, I actually put into the stock market. I actually put it into a very safe ETF that tracked the S&P 500, and that was something that I just did because I didn't want my money just sitting in a bank and producing absolutely no interest. That helped me grow faster and get me that down deposit much faster. The other thing that I did early on was I traded my time for money, and all that means is I tried to look for extra jobs. As I was, starting off with a low income and a low salary, I wasn't making too much money in the beginning. I tried to do some side hustles, right? I started working with real estate agents. I helped them market. I helped them close some deals with door knocking and, handing out cards back in the day, flyers. I just did as many side jobs as I possibly could that helped me just create some extra income on the side. And everything that I brought in, again, I saved it, I put it into that ETF, and I just let it grow and kept my eye on the prize. I know this is one of the toughest pieces for a lot of people, but trust me, if you really want to buy your first place, you're going to make it happen and just aim for 20%. Now, it doesn't stop there. Just because you have a 20% down deposit doesn't mean that you can just walk into the bank and the bank's going to give you the loan for the rest that you need to buy the house. Credit score is something that's very important. And the credit score is what shows the bank that you're actually loan worthy. Like, how trustworthy is this individual? Is this person going to pay my loan back? Are they going to miss payments? Ideally, you want your score to be above 700. And that's a very good signal to the bank that you are loan worthy. And just make sure that, because not a lot of people actually do this and they don't know what their score is. Just make sure you're checking your score every single year. Just monitor it. You never know when you're going to need a loan, even outside of real estate. It's just something that you need to do all the time, every year. Just see where your score is, and it's going to help you in every aspect of your life personally. Now, if you have a low credit score, if you see something that's like less than 700 or in the mid 600s, 650, which most people get themselves into, then some tips and tricks are to reduce all of your credit card bills, obviously pay off as much debt as possible, and try to keep the balances below 30%. So for example, if you have a $1,000 credit card, at any given time, you want to keep your credit card to a $300 balance. So try to keep it 30% and below, because that actually impacts your credit score. And of course, number one, the number one thing that kills your credit score is if you miss payments. So always pay your bills on time. That is the most important, and make sure that you never miss a payment. So if you do those things, your credit score should shoot up to above 700. And as long as you're keeping that strict budget, you're going to be on a good track to get that down deposit and get that 20% as soon as possible. Perfect. Now let's talk about the niche. Now that you have that 20%, now it's time to decide what real estate investing strategy is right for you. So in the last decade, I've done a lot of work in this space. I've done a lot of different types of investing, tried different strategies. Some work really well. Some are a lot harder than what's perceived. And I've learned a lot. And I just wanted to create this simple chart, and I wanted to go through this chart with you. And obviously this is not every single real estate strategy, but these are probably the most, popular ones that most people think about, like single family, flipping, and Airbnb. But then I'm going to talk about one that people don't really talk about, which is student rentals. I'm going to save that for last because this one is actually really important to understand. But let's talk about in general how you would assess a real estate strategy and how do you pick one. Well, it all comes down to your risk tolerance. How much risk and how much time are you willing to put in, and how much reward are you expecting? We all know the only way to make money in real estate are really there's two ways to make money. Number one is cash flow. So that is how much money you have coming in per month. And I'm going to explain that in a later section. And the other one is equity. And that is based on the value of your house going up. Now, just because you're thinking about real estate and you think that, if you just choose any random strategy and you think that all the cash flow is going to come in and the appreciation is going to happen and you're going to put, no time or effort into it, that is absolutely wrong. And you're going to set yourself up for complete disaster. You really have to understand the risk profile of what you're getting yourself into. So let's just talk about that for a second here, and let me give you some pointers for each. So the first one, single family. This is obviously the most traditional and what most people think about when they're investing in real estate. As you can see on the chart, it's a pretty low risk strategy, but at the same time, it's also not that profitable in terms of cash flow. So single family is when you literally buy a house and you rent it to a single family. You just rent the whole place to one person. And every single month, your job is to keep it rented and collect rent and just solve any issues that the tenant has. Obviously, the goal is in this strategy is to pick a really good location that attracts a good quality tenant and someone that's going to pay their bills on time every single month. And it's a little harder than you think, right? To just really know where to invest and choosing that tenant. Let's be real. When all of your rent is coming in from one person, then the probability of that rent going to zero is a little higher, because if that person loses their job or something bad happens and they just can't pay anymore, well, all of the money that you bring in is now tied to that person, and it's all tied to their rent, and it's over if they don't pay. And you're gonna spend a lot of money and time yourself trying to get that person out. So that's why this strategy is not as profitable as others, because again, you're renting to a single person. There's only so much a single person is gonna pay for a house. In general, it's gonna be your mortgage payment plus a little cost. If the rent goes, if you're charging too high of a rent, then you're not going to attract anyone, because in general, those people will probably just try to buy their own house. So now let's move on to flipping, right? What is flipping? Essentially, that is what you might hear on social media, the BRRRR strategy. This is when you buy a place, you renovate it, rent it out, and then either refinance or sell at a higher amount. So the goal here, though, is you want to buy a place that is at a discounted price. And that is the trick and the key to this whole strategy. So it's very hard to do that, because you have to have a very strong understanding of the market and what a good price is. And if you think about the strategy and break it down, well, the first thing is, again, you have to buy a place that's very low price at a discount. You have to put very strategic renovations into the place, get it up to a decent shape, and then you have to know that the value of that place is now higher than what you paid for, and how much, and it's more than how much you put into the house. Just so, for example, if you bought a place for $300,000, you put in $50,000 in renovations, well, you put the total cost is around $350,000. You want to make sure that after these renovations, it's now worth more than $350,000. Ideally, $400,000, $450,000, and that is something that requires a pretty deep understanding and makes it a little risky. And that's why this is a more high risk strategy. On top of that, you need money to make money. You're going to need a lot more than 20% to buy these types of houses, because now you're renovating the place and you're trying to make this place look really nice, or you're trying to add units. You're trying to do something to this place that substantially increases the value. And it's not just, switching up some light bulbs or putting in some new flooring. You have to make very strategic upgrades, and it's going to take a lot of money for you to do that. And on top of that, you need to find a team and a contractor that can do the job on time and do quality work. So again, it's a strategy that really does work. Like it is, I've done it myself. It's if you are advanced and you know what you're doing, it could be very profitable, but there is definitely some risk here. Now let's talk about Airbnb. This is something that I've done a lot of research on. I know a lot of people in Airbnb. I'm not going to say I'm 100% an expert, because I have not done Airbnb myself. And that's because, to me, the risk is just too high. Yes, it is profitable. It can be profitable if you do it right. But it is so dependent on the location that you pick, because you have to attract tenants every single month. And the more tenants that you attract will dictate how much profit you make. And I don't want to be in a strategy that I have to spend that much time and I have to pick that perfect location that is going to attract all these tenants every single month. Sure, if you do it right and you find that location, good. It could absolutely make money, but there's still a lot of other risks that people don't understand, like the rules and regulations that are coming out every single year within these cities. Look at the news today. There's always something coming out that's attacking the business. Cities are limiting the use and this type of strategy. They don't want too many Airbnbs in their cities. It's causing a lot of debate, and I don't want to be tied to a strategy that's so dependent on rules and regulations and the government policy. So this is something that I just have not tried, but it's, again, a very high risk, high reward strategy, but you have to be very careful. You need to know exactly what you're doing. There's a lot of time and effort put into this. And if you do it wrong and you pick that wrong location, you will not be profitable, and you'll be sitting on a house that is not that marketable. So be very careful if this is a strategy that you're trying to get into. My favorite strategy that I would pick, and it's actually the first strategy that I used when I bought my first house and helped me basically build a foundation for me to get a $5 million portfolio in less than 10 years, is student rentals. Student rentals, simply put, is finding a place, like a normal house, nothing special, just like any normal house, that's as close as possible to a university or college. That's all you have to do. Find a place that's near school and rent it out to students. So it's very easy to pick the right location. That's good. And you're going to make a lot more money than traditional single family homes, even Airbnbs, because now you're renting each individual room instead of the entire house. So just to give you a real story and a real life example, the first house I ever bought was a 5-bedroom house, 3 bedrooms upstairs and 2 bedrooms, like a basement suite. And it was very close to a university. And I had to decide, am I going to rent this place to single families? Like I thought most people would do and would be very, traditional. So when I did that and tried to understand how much rent I was going to get, the maximum that I was getting in that time was around $2,200 to $2,500 per month, right? That was basically the market levels and the rent levels for a single family home in that area. But since it was so close to a university, I was able to find students that would rent the place for $600 per room. And this is like 8 years ago. $600 per room. That's $3,000 per month. That's $500 more than a traditional single family. That is money in your pocket, and that is how you get ahead in real estate. I told you before, it's all about cash flow and appreciation. With this type of strategy, having that extra cushion, that extra $500 coming into your pocket, that money can be saved and reinvested into the business itself. And that's what helped me grow and scale to like 7 properties today. The other beauty about this strategy is that it's incredibly safe. I talked about before, single families. Since you're renting to only one person, all your rent is tied to that one person. The potential for that rent to go to zero is higher because that person could lose their job and now your rent is going to zero. And it takes you a lot of money to get that person out. I talked about that before. With student rentals, because you're renting to more people, more students, instead of just one person, you have, in my case, 5 students in one house. The probability of all students not paying at the same time is incredibly low. It's never happened to me before. And you don't really hear many stories about students not paying their rent. In general, students are there to study. They're backed by government loans. They're backed by their parents, and their parents are signing the lease as well. So you are, it's as low risk as can be. You're backed completely by by the parents and the government. So the rent going to zero is, again, very low. And that is, to me, one of the most attractive reasons and why I started with student rentals, because I did not want to be in a situation where my rent was going to zero. One more piece with student rentals when it comes to cash flow. This is a misconception, and a lot of people think that I'm crazy because I rent with students. They believe that it's just so much work. It's such a high turnover. Every single year you have to find new students and spend all this time and fill up the house every single year. People don't understand that is the opportunity that makes this strategy a great one. That turnover is what gives you the ability to readjust your rent to market levels. And that is huge. In the example that I gave you, my first house that I bought, 8 years ago, it was $600 per room. Today, if I do the current market levels, I can get over $800 per room today. That's an extra $200 per room. That's $1,000 per month extra already. And I've been doing that every single year. If you rent to a single family and you have a long-term lease, because in general, that's what you're aiming for when you're renting to single families. You want someone that comes in and they're going to stay with you for the next 5-10 years. There's rules and regulations in place that limits how much you can increase your rent. So in many areas, the maximum that you can rent is like 2 to 3%. And that it honestly limits your cash flow ability, and you're kind of stuck if you rent to a person that's staying with you for a very long time. Sure, it might require less work, or in general, you don't have to find a person for a long time. But at the same time, it's very easy to fall behind in terms of your market rental that you could be getting. And that's something that I want to avoid. I'm in the game to try to make as much money as possible and set myself up for generational wealth. So that's why, in general, these strategies are all good. They all can make you money. Some have higher risk, some have higher rewards. But to me, student rentals checks off all the boxes, and I have a lot more videos that go deeper into this concept. And if you have any more questions, leave a comment. But let's move on. If you are having trouble trying to understand what niche is good for you, I get it, because it is very complicated. Leave a comment. I have a guide that can help you choose the niche that's best for you. All right, let's move on to now targeting your actual property. So for my case, in 2025, I'm going to do what I always loved, which was student rentals. And now I'm ready to buy my first house. I have the money. My credit score is good. Now I'm on the hunt for the house. And look, it actually gets complicated. I thought this concept was pretty easy in my mind, but then I tried to create like a little bit of a mind map to explain this concept, and it goes very deep. And you have to be very careful. And it all depends, again, on the strategy that you pick. Now, first things first is you're going to want to find an actual house. How do you find them? How do you find a place? Well, really, there's three options. Number one is you can do the research yourself, right? So you go through online listings. My favorite ones are Zillow, Zoocasa, and Realtor.com. So these ones are really good. They have all the properties that are available to you. For me, since my strategy is pretty straightforward, I look at all the houses that are near my favorite colleges and universities. I look at places that have a specific configuration. For me, in general, I want a 5-bedroom house with 2 washrooms, 2 kitchens, that kind of thing. I put the filters in and I search. I search in the area that I'm looking for, and all these sites have all the houses that are available. Obviously, the most common would be to go find a real estate agent. That's another option. Get connected, understand, find someone that's trustworthy. That, again, is very important. You want to find someone that is through a referral, or someone that is really good in that area or in that strategy that you're picking, for example. So if, for me, student rentals, I want to make sure I have an agent that knows that area. They know how to market to students. They know where the best locations are. I would ask those questions to make sure that agent knew more specifics about the strategy that I was getting into. So do that. And advantages of working with a real estate agent for sure is they'll have local expertise, so they can take out the guesswork. But remember, there is a commission that you're going to pay that requires trust. And, in general, they'll have access to all the listings. So take advantage of that. Make sure that they're sending you all the properties available to them, and they're giving you comparables. Make sure you are getting the value when you are working with a real estate agent. But of course, it's a very popular way, and I highly suggest working with a real estate agent in the beginning. Then you can get into off-market properties. And this is again, it is possible 100%, and you can get some really good deals if you are able to find someone that's willing to sell privately. In my business, now that I'm kind of known in the area and I have many student rentals, people do reach out. I have a good network. So there is a possibility to find some off-market properties. And if you do, it's again a great opportunity, but it does require a lot of work. It requires connections. It requires you going out and literally door knocking or cold calling and finding houses or homeowners that are wanting to sell. So that is an avenue. And the other piece is to actually connect with experts in the field. So example, in real estate, you're always going to need some bankers, lawyers. Oh, and I put bankers twice, but anyway, you get the point. You want to make sure that you're connecting with other individuals in other verticals, and they have access to also many different people, many different investors, and you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of them and make those connections. Okay, great. So now you understand the house search. Now let's talk about location. Now this, again, is critical to real estate. This is the only way that you will actually make money, because this dictates the type of tenants that you're going to get, the type of businesses that you're attracting, and also what makes millionaires is the appreciation how much is this house going to go up in any given year. You want to maximize your potential, so you have to choose the best location based on your strategy. So just going back to, student rentals in general, I'm looking for proximity to essentials. So you want to look at things like, is this place close to work, to schools? Are they accessible to the highways? Do they have local hospitals nearby, grocery stores? What are those commute times to, city centers? Or in general, for me, like school, I want to make sure that all my houses are 5 minutes away, 5-minute walk to school, right? So commute times. So understand, like, who are you attracting? Who are you going for? Who's gonna rent? Who do you want to rent to? And you have to live like them. What is important to them? What do they want to be close to? So these are the types of things that you want to ask and look out for. Also, neighborhood quality, right? I don't know, for me, I look for quality. I don't want to look for, high crime areas and stuff like that. I'm going for student rentals. So if I'm trying to attack, studious students that actually are there for higher education, I'm trying to pick some neighborhoods that look good, they're safe, and they're walkable. So I'm always looking for those things. And in general, you also want to look for future development plans, like in the actual neighborhood or in the city. And you can find that out through contacting your city, understanding actually asking for the development plans, because they have that roadmap, and just in general doing some research in the news and on Google. Just type in the city, type in development plans, look for some new up and coming investments. And that's always a good sign if you can find out what's happening in the city, and if there's anything being done or investments being made. That's always a good sign. Market trends, right? So I talked about appreciation, any development, infrastructure plans, and then immigration, right? That's a big deal. A lot of places make their money and keep the house prices going up because of demand, right? In general. So if you're in this for the long run and you are trying to seriously make some money on real estate, you want to find places that are attracting immigrants. Where do people want to live that are coming new to the country? Are these cities growing? Are these hot spots? That is what you want to look for. And in general, new immigrants coming in probably can't afford the best or the most expensive areas. So that's what I'm saying. The subtle point is you want to look for areas that are attracting immigrants, or just in general growth, and in more kind of a lower mid cost of living area. So then the appreciation is there and you can make some serious money. Investment potential. So these are just some things that I will look out for when I'm looking at student rentals. What is my rent history? What is the potential for increases? How much am I, based on my price that I'm paying for the house and the cash flow coming in? And I'm going to talk about this in the next step here. How much money is actual profit when I bring the rent in? And are the colleges and the universities growing? Is there an actual demand for students? These are all things I'm looking at, and I literally would go to these areas, to the cities I'm looking to invest in, and walk the streets, drive, see what's close by, and connect to as many people as possible and live the life as a tenant. See what it's like and see if I would live there. Last but not least, the actual location or the actual property type that you're going to pick, right? So if you're going for the flipping strategy, you're going to want to understand what kind of renovations are needed. You're going to need some appraisal values from a realtor or a professional to tell you, or contractors, like how much is it going to cost to actually make these properties modern and attractive to investors or the tenants. So very, very critical to know what's the current state of the house that you're looking into and how much money is it going to need. How much money is it going to need to modernize? Forced appreciation. So this is a little more advanced, but like I said before, there's ways that you can increase the value of the house, and you have to be strategic about it. And it all depends on what you're going to renovate. So is there a way that you can renovate these places and force appreciation? So just for example, for student rentals, Again, it's quite easy, and that's why I love this strategy. The best way to force appreciation is by increasing the revenue potential for the house. How do you do that in a student rental? Well, number one is either you have to increase the rent, and you can only do that so much. Number two is that you can add more units legally, of course. But if you find a place that is near university or college, good location, good area, and you can find a place that is a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom upstairs, but has a big enough basement that you can legally turn into more units, or you can build some additional units in the backyard. Well, now you're turning your single-family home, 3-bedroom single-family home, into potentially a duplex, triplex, and that is going to increase the rental potential for these houses, and that is going to attract a lot of investors and make the value of that house go up. Again, this goes really deep, and if you have any questions, leave a comment. But this is the starting point that you have to look into when you are buying your first house. All right, let's talk about now the last step, but the most important step, and this is a step that everyone gets wrong. A lot of beginner real estate investors don't understand this process, okay? And that is cash flow analysis. Think of cash flow as the bloodline of your real estate investment. If you don't make money per month or extra money per month, what are you going to use when something goes wrong? What are you going to use for maintenance? If you're just breaking even every single month, it's not good enough. You want to find a strategy that has a positive cash flow. So let's go through exactly what that means, how you calculate cash flow, and some other cool metrics that you should be looking into when you're investing in real estate, especially in 2025. So the process is, first things first, you have to understand the purchase price, right? Understand what you're going to buy this place for and write that down. That's number one. Number two, you then start estimating the monthly revenue, okay? And in general, that comes from the rent, right? But there might be some other ways to increase the revenue through parking, laundry, like having some coin laundry machines. So you have to add up all of the revenue coming in. So just for example, for student housing in general, it's the rent and maybe some parking in the back or whatever. But you have to estimate the monthly revenue and total that up. That's your revenue coming in. So now let's talk about estimating operating expenses. This comes from your property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities, and that depends if they're paying or not, and potentially some property management. So here you are trying to estimate the cost that it's going to take to maintain the house. And this does not include the mortgage at this point, but you estimate the operating expenses, and this is what they are. So have a very good detailed analysis, do some due diligence, and get the numbers for yourself and add them up and get them as accurate as you possibly can. Now what you do is you subtract your revenue from your operating expense, and that is what we call the net operating income. Okay, so this is the money that would be left over, assuming you bought the house in cash. Just write that number down because I'm going to explain what you use that number for in a minute. But now you've calculated your NOI, right? Just again, revenue minus operating expenses. Now you're going to subtract your mortgage payments, okay? And you can get the mortgage payments from any online calculator. Just go to your bank or just look online and ask and just search, mortgage payment calculator. And I can even send you some that I use if you comment below. So now you're going to put in how much money you use for the house, your down deposit, the interest rates, all that, and you're going to get an output from the calculator of what your mortgage payment will be. But remember, your mortgage payment is divided into a principal payment and an interest payment. The principal payment is actually your money, and that's paying down the loan of the house. Okay. So that's actually included in your profit, but it's not, you don't have it in your pocket for now. It's included in the mortgage. And the interest portion is a pure cost. That's the bank making the money off of you because they're loaning you 80% to buy the house. So that makes complete sense. So again, your mortgage payment is your principal and interest. Write that down. Now you take that total mortgage payment and you subtract it from your NOI, and you are at cash flow. This is truly the dollars that are left over that are going to be in your pocket every single month if you get the rest of these calculations correct. The goal is for your cash flow to be positive. There needs to be a surplus of money coming in so you can save that money, invest that money, and reinvest into the business. This is truly the bloodline, and this is how the good real estate investors get ahead. This is why student rentals in general is my favorite strategy. They do produce a very high cash flow. So now that's step one. Okay, that's a good thing if you do find something that is green, that's got a high cash flow. But there's some other key metrics that you want to look into as well. Number one, let's just go back to here. When you have that NOI number, remember that number that I said where you just take the revenue minus the operating expense, not the mortgage payment, but just the revenue and the operating expense. If you take that number and divide by the purchase price, you're going to get something called a cap rate. Now, the cap rate is pretty important. I don't use it all the time. In the beginning, I did, but it is a very good metric to just understand, as it gives you a percentage, a return percentage. It's basically how much money you're making, assuming that you paid for the house in full cash. Okay, it gets rid of the mortgage payments. And the reason why it's a good number to know is because it gives you a way to compare other options, other listings. So in general, you want to, when you do go out and actually find your properties, you're going to want to find like 2 or 3 listings, but they're all going to have different prices. They're all going to have different operating expenses and rental potential. So it's very difficult sometimes to find out which one is the best one, which one is literally the best investment. So you want to look at the cap rates. So the higher the cap rate means a higher return. The lower the cap rate means lower the return. So you want to look at, in general, what are the cap rates for these particular houses. You can literally find the comparables online. So get that number, and then you can easily compare which one's giving you the highest return, assuming you bought the house in cash. And the reason why they get rid of the mortgage payments is because the financing, as you can imagine, could be very different depending on how much money you put down, right? So if you, like I said before, you want to ideally you want to put 20% down, right? But sometimes you don't have 20%. Maybe you have to put 5%, 10%, 50%, whatever. That changes the mortgage payments, and that changes the overall cash flow. And because that's so variable, the mortgage payments, it takes that, this calculation takes that variability out and just assumes you bought the house in cash. So, and let the financing figure itself out when you actually get to that point. And this gives you a really good indicator of what the return would be when the house is paid off. Okay, so now the other really important metric is your cash on cash return. Okay, all that is taking your cash flow that you produced on a yearly basis, and you're going to divide that by your actual cost that you put in, which is your down deposit and any closing costs. Okay, that number should be, I only look for properties that are over 20%, and that is your actual return on your cash. That means if everything goes well and you are able to keep the place maintained and rented and everything just is working properly, if you have a 20% return on your cash on cash return on this metric, you're going to pay back your initial investment in 5 years. Now tell me another investment opportunity that can do that. But it gets even better than that with real estate. And you have to go one step deeper if you want to truly understand the returns. That is when you take the principal payment. Do you remember how I said before, a mortgage payment includes your principal and your interest? The principal payment is your money. It's just not in your pocket, but it's your money. It's your equity. So what you want to do is take your cash flow, the money that you're actually making per month, and you're going to add back the principal payment that the bank is kind of keeping for you. Because again, it's your money. It's just with the bank. And that really is your true profit. And you're going to divide that by your all-in cost. And that is going to show, if you find a good property, you will see a 30-40% return on a good, solid real estate investing strategy. And that's what I'm looking into, and that's what I focus on when I get into student rentals. Some key notes, some lessons learned over the years, when you're going through this process. Not everything is going to go perfect, right? We all know that. So being more conservative is a lot more safer. Instead of having, surprises when you buy your first house, I rather over budget than under. So just overestimate your costs, right? Just be safe. Take the worst case scenario when you're doing the math. Just take the worst case scenario. Aim for some vacancy, right? So let's say you are doing student rentals or doing Airbnbs or whatever. Just pretend that you're not renting it for the full year. Right? What does that do to the numbers? Take a 70%, 80% vacancy rate, as in, 1 or 2 months, let's say you get no rent, right? What happens? Make sure you know that. One thing that's gotten me is timing. Everyone always asks me, is this a good time to buy? The interest rates are high, the interest rates are low, or whatever. When should I buy? It's absolutely irrelevant. Like, you need to find an opportunity that cash flows positively in the current environment. And you have to understand that real estate is a long-term game, a very long-term game. You're not going to become a millionaire overnight. The point with real estate is that you can start off with a very low down deposit, 5 to 20%, and own a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house and get all the advantages of depreciation without paying for it in cash up front. That is the power of real estate. So the idea that there's a timing to this and, should I wait for interest rates or not? I don't let any of that noise bother me. I don't care about any of that. I let the math do the talking. I do my cash flow analysis. I see if it's green. I have a very strict process that I stick to. And I know that when, in this environment, when interest rates are high, yes, I know my cash flow is going to be a little lower. It makes sense. But if I still find those properties that are cash flowing positively today, which there are, I can guarantee you they are because I'm buying them, I know for a fact that it's only going to get better in 5 years, 10 years when interest rates go down. It's all cycles. So I am never scared. I would never let the news or fear stop me from making a decision. If I let that happen, I would never be in this position today. I would never own 7 houses. I would not be making over $100,000 per year just in pure rental income. I would not be in that. I wouldn't be in this space. I wouldn't be in this position if I let my fear do the talking, or if I listened, to the people on the news or just in general, uneducated people talk about interest rates like they are economic experts. I don't let that noise bother me. I keep it very strict. I let the process do the speaking, and that's it. And just know there's always ways for you to pivot. When interest rates go down, you can always refinance. Okay. So that's enough about interest rates. The other piece to real estate the beauty of it is that it actually helps you from a tax perspective. All your rent and all the expenses, mortgage interest rates, the interest that you're paying, all the expenses, all of that is tax deductible. And that is why a lot of millionaires and billionaires use real estate as an investment option. So make sure you hire a tax professional and really take advantage of of the expenses that you are spending on this house. There's a lot of them that you're allowed to deduct, and that's going to help you from a tax perspective. And always have a budget, a backup budget. Try to keep an emergency fund. Things are not going to be perfect. Things are going to go up and down, up and down. Real estate is like a roller coaster sometimes. Some months are doing amazing, nothing can go wrong, and then all of a sudden, everything goes wrong. You have to be able to adapt. You have to have some money on the side. Just, keep your head up, understand the big picture, and you'll do well if you keep to a strict process and really choose a strategy that aligns with your risk tolerance. So if you want to learn more, I have a free Discord where I'm giving free one-on-one training and coaching to people who want to get into real estate investments. So I'm going to leave the link below and just DM me and we can get on a call together. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.